Happy Friday, friends. I apologize for running a little bit late. I had a bit of a schedule change first thing this morning, so it took me a little bit longer to get on, but here we are. I know I missed last Friday, so we're making up for last Friday too. But happy Flavor Friday. I am so glad that you are hopping on here with me. Drop down below, let me know how did your meal planning go this week? What flavors did you enjoy? And while you are hopping on and saying hello, I am going to pop over and make sure that I actually am live where I am meant to be live, and also make sure that we're going to share into the group. So whoever is in the group can catch me over there. I'm also over on LinkedIn and YouTube. So any of those 3 or 4 places you can catch me. All right, there we go. So we're going to share that, and let's just go ahead and dive in. Today I want to talk about flavor first and my flavor first framework. So if you are new to me, new to this channel, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to meet you and chat with you and one day hopefully cook with you. My name is Rebecca Connolly. I am a personal chef and culinary nutritionist, food coach, busy mom, busy solopreneur, all the things. But I do try and get my 7-8 hours of sleep a night, surprisingly enough. All right. So flavor first was never just a method. It is a conviction. It is my conviction. So today isn't really about a recipe. Today is all about belief. And I have spent almost 20 years telling people, telling my clients, working with my clients, showing more than telling that flavor and health are not opposites. And that belief is the reason that Flavor First exists. So today, I want to talk about the convictions underneath the way that we cook, that we serve people, and the way that we build our work, the way that I cook, that I serve, that I build my work and am building my work, right? All right. So the first part, where did Flavor First even come from? So it didn't begin as a marketing idea, as you might think. It actually began as a conviction that I really couldn't shake, that a meal can be technically healthy and still fail to truly serve someone if they do not enjoy eating it. In America, we have this weird disconnect between food and flavor and wellness and fueling the body, right? They about 100 plus years ago, there was an intentional divorce between food as fuel and food and flavorful food. That was intentional. You can go back and read the history yourself. I've been diving into it a little bit more recently just to try to be able to understand it, because it is unique to America and our views of food and how food serves us is fascinating to me, at least. So anyway, bottom line, the divorce between flavor and food did not always exist as it does today, and we are still trying to reconcile it, not just in our own minds, but also on our tables, right? So when it comes to being healthy, being well, trying to eat well rounded, all of these ways that we like to phrase it, we don't necessarily think of healthy food that is good for us, as flavorful, as something that we enjoy. We still attach all this moral language to it, right? We have our treat meals, and then we have our good meals. We have the things that are indulgent, and then we have the meals that we eat on the regular to keep our bodies fueled and balanced and in good health and that sort of thing. The two don't necessarily come together. And and when we try to become more well, when we try to focus on our wellness, that's also our first instinct, right? Is to sort of buckle down and or pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? And become very rigid and very controlling and very technical about what we're eating. And now, I do want to say that there can absolutely be situations where that has to be done, where it's an emergent need, it's a critical need, and you do have to make that 180 shift in your diet. But even as a personal chef, those instances, those circumstances are more rare than the general, just trying to be more healthy, more balanced, and meet basic nutrition needs. So when it comes to healthy and when it comes to delicious, we want to put those two back together again, basically, is what I'm saying. So a meal can be technically healthy, but it can still fail to truly serve someone if they don't enjoy eating it, right? Enjoying our food is not something that we are comfortable saying. If we're enjoying our food, it's food that's indulgent, it's not food that's healthy for us, right? So when you're trying to be healthy, you may be able to force yourself through food that you dread for a little while. And, let's talk about a little bit about food aversions too. If you have a food aversion, if it's a true aversion, if it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, if it's down there at 1 or 2, maybe even 3, don't mess with it. If it's a food you dread, don't even try. Don't, enjoy what you enjoy and then maybe. But if it's true aversion, it's not worth the angst that you're going to put yourself through for it, right? But you can't build a sustainable way of eating meals around foods, around ingredients, around meals that you don't genuinely enjoy. So, as a personal chef and food coach, I absolutely refuse to treat nourishment and flavor as two separate jobs. Every meal that I create has to do both. It should both nourish the body, support the client's goals, and still taste like something that they would willingly choose. That's not an extra. It is my whole philosophy around menu planning, meal planning, and feeding people well. So, one of the misconceptions that I run into constantly is this idea, as I've said, that eating healthy means eating bland. Now, this also has a long history, and we can actually trace it back to, I think, around the 1850s. 100 plus, yeah, well, we're 2026 now. So around that time period, there were infant mortality was on the rise. Child mortality was higher, of course, than it is now, just because of medical advances, right? And doctors started, or the experts started recommending, because they didn't understand germs, bacteria, and how that worked, they posited that, well, perhaps it's the food that the children are eating, right? And back then, children were basically eating what adults ate. And it could be all of the spicy, well seasoned, foods that were common at the time that children were eating. And the experts were, one of the reigning theories that turned out to get a lot of attention was we need to feed children bland diets because the spice, the seasoning, that is what may be causing higher rates in mortality, infant and child mortality. So this became a sign of sign of luxury, a sign of well-to-doness, one might say, that feeding your children a bland diet, a different diet than what you yourself as an adult were enjoying. So that's sort of the beginning of bland food is healthy food, right? So we've been taught, it was modeled to us perhaps, and I think it's only been in the past 10, 15 years that healthy food has to taste that way, that we're trading out flavor, we're trading out nourishment for flavor, right? We can't have both. If you're adding flavor, you're adding salt, sugar, fat, all of those bad ingredients for you, right? And that's where the flavor is coming from. But flavor does not undo nutrition at all. Flavor enhances nutrition, and a lot of flavorful ingredients, a lot of flavor enhancers actually bring with them a lot of health benefits. Herbs, citrus, spices, aromatics, texture, a sauce that's actually worth eating. Those are the things often that what make our nourishing food more sustainable. And this is where flavor becomes part of consistency, right? When your food tastes good, you're not relying entirely on willpower to convince yourself to eat it. The meal itself helps to carry the habit. So the families I notice and those that I cook for who stick with nourishing meals long terms are not usually eating the blandest version of healthy, right? They have found a way, I've helped them to find a way to make nourishing food something that they would choose anyway because it is delicious. It is craveable. It is something that they want to repeat over and over again, that it's that good. All right. So I've had clients that have asked me to make meals very plain, with very little seasoning, nothing too rich, clean food, as we might say, right? But again, even using that clean versus dirty can also carry with it moral connotations that we don't necessarily want to associate with food. Right now, I could have simply followed the request without asking another question. Now, to back up just a moment, when I onboard a new personal chef client, and I carry a full roster for me is 6 to 8 clients at one time. Um, when I onboard a client, we do a very deep questionnaire about tastes and preferences as well as dietary requirements, whether they are self-imposed or whether or not they are RD recommended, doctor recommended. If it's, true conditions that need medical guidance, then I certainly follow those. Diagnosis and prescription are outside the scope of my of what I do as a personal chef and as a nutritionist, right? As a nutritionist, I can support and educate, but I do not prescribe. And so that's always left up to the client for the final decision. So I could have simply followed the request, right, to just make plain food, and I certainly have. But instead, I took a step back, just like we did, and I slowed the conversation down. I asked a few more simple questions that hopefully will help you discern what it is that you like in your food, right? I asked what she meant by plain, what she was trying to avoid, what she believed flavorful food would cost her. And somewhere along the way, somewhere in our conversation, she revealed that she had come to believe that if food tasted really good, it probably wasn't supporting her goals. So, just say yes down below if that's a belief that you've run into, that if it's a belief that you've ever held, and if it's a mental roadblock that you run into in your own health journey, because I certainly do. Even though my philosophy is flavor first, right? I still run into it subconsciously and I'm like, oh, that's the wall. I got to back up a minute with myself. So once I understood her concern, I explained that flavor doesn't have to work against what her goals were, what she wanted. We can create meals that are fresh, balanced, and nourishing without making them feel like punishment. One more chicken breast bowl during the week, right? So we started gently. I added fresh herbs. I added a little hit of citrus. I added a little bit of garlic, a little bit of onion, thoughtful seasoning, right? Simple sauces or simple flavors that supported the meal instead of overwhelming it. So by the third week, or by a third cook date, she told me that it was her first time eating toward her goals, that eating hadn't felt like punishment. And I remember thinking how easy it would have been to, at the first, just to ignore what I knew simply to avoid an uncomfortable conversation, which turned out to be a very revealing conversation, not just for her, but also for me as a personal chef. So I am very glad and very grateful for her patience and that she played along, so to speak. And it worked out. It was a win-win for both of us. So this isn't just something that I say. Flavor first framework, right? Kind of rolls off the tongue. I worked on that for a little bit, but it shapes real decisions on every cook date, every menu plan that, or every menu suggestion that I send, right? There's no food shaming. I'm not the food police. As a personal chef, I cook to the client's guidelines as well as their tastes and preferences. But there's also, if they want, there can also be an educational component to it. So it's not about what the client eats, not about what they've struggled with, not about what worked or didn't work before. There is certainly flexibility over rigidity. The plan has to bend to real life because real life does not organize itself around a perfect meal plan. Can I get an amen? Every dietary need still gets full flavor. Whether someone needs gluten-free, blood sugar conscious, smaller protein forward portions, or higher protein, smaller portions, keto friendly options, or something else entirely, nobody gets a lesser version of the meals, right? The food still deserves to taste good. So I think a lot of times when people see flavor first, they assume, oh, these are just going to taste great, but it's not necessarily going to be good for me. No, 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 no. My goal is to make it both nourishing for you in particular, as well as flavorful, because that's the only way that these meals, this lifestyle change will become sustainable. So, this matters at home, of course, but it also matters if you've ever wondered whether your years in the kitchen could become meaningful paid work. If you've cooked for a long time, you probably have convictions like this, similar to this, even if you've never said them out loud. You probably have strong opinions about what works and about how people really eat, about what makes a meal sustainable, about what families need when life is busy. Those beliefs that you hold were not formed by a trend that you read last week on social media. They were built through experience. That conviction is valuable. It's part of what makes a personal chef worth hiring, not just the technique, not just the recipes. And I adjust every recipe for every client. So when a client asks if they can have a recipe, I always say yes. There's no gatekeeping because that recipe has been created in a sense just for them. It's the confidence to listen well, to understand the client, and then say, here's what I believe will actually work for your family. You don't have to abandon what experience has taught you just to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. You can respect the client, remain flexible, and still bring your professional judgment to the table. So here's what I want you to sit with today. What do you believe about your work that you have been quietly softening just to avoid friction? Where have you been presenting something as though it were only a preference when experience has shown you it is actually part of how you serve people well? You do not need to agree with everyone to agree with your conviction before you trust it. You do need to say it clearly enough that people understand what they are actually getting when they work with you. So, for me, flavor first was never just a cooking method. It's a conviction. It's a belief that nourishment should not feel like punishment, that flavor supports consistency, and that food can care for your body without losing the joy of eating. It's a conviction that I have finally stopped apologizing for. And I would encourage you to find your convictions and stop apologizing for those too. So, this week's group challenge, and if you're not in our group, I would love to have you join us over in the Kitchen Confidence Circle. Drop group down below. Our Flavor First Friday challenge is this: name one belief. Name one belief about your work, whatever that work is, that you have been softening and say it plainly in the group. You can just drop it down below this live in a comment, or you can drop it under the homework post that will post it just after this live, or you can just DM it to me. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. No hedging, no explaining it away. And if you know your experience in the kitchen could become meaningful paid work, and I know that it can, but you're not sure how to turn that conviction into a clear personal chef service, comment, call down below, and I am happy to talk through what that could look like for you. Remember, flavor is how we savor it at the table and in life. Until next time, keep it simple. Thanks for joining me.